Quiet down, please, class. School is now in session.
Teach me the math of love triangles. Yay, time for book facts.
So as you may be able to tell from the full handheld microphone we have today, I am on business. And that's because we're going to talk about the art of crafting the perfect love triangle, so that you as a viewer or as a reader will always know who is gonna win. Let's do it.
The math of love triangles isn't hard to learn.
You're not taking in what we're saying. We're a little bit concerned.
So we may be at school, but I do still have a drink because I'm the teacher and I can do what I want. So lesson 1 today, we are going to talk about the recent history of the love triangle in mainstream media. So about 15 years ago, the love triangle was absolutely everywhere. It was the basis of every major franchise. We had Twilight that led into basically every other vampire franchise, including the Vampire Diaries and True Blood. We had things like The Mortal Instruments, and we had The Hunger Games. And I would say around the time that The Hunger Games was finishing was when people started to really burn out from love triangles. I remember it just being a thing that everyone hated love triangles. Although I don't think people hate love triangles, I just think people hate badly written ones, and people would just burn out from seeing too many of them. And although the love triangle never fully went away, it did just dim its light a little bit. But in recent history, we've got things like The Summer I Turned Pretty, My Life with the Walter Boys, Emily in Paris, Shadow and Bone, and a million other things, including the Materialists movie that's just come out. I think love triangles are well and truly back. And people have very strong opinions on love triangles. I do think there's a right and a wrong way to do them. I mean, Ali Hazelwood, who is a very prolific author, the author of The Love Hypothesis, has literally just been bullied off social media because in an interview she said she was Team Gale over Team Peter in The Hunger Games. She was literally online bullied off social media for saying that she was Team Gale. Cancel culture is the new witch hunt. That's a different story. So before love triangles burn out again and everyone decides they hate them again, let's talk about them and how to craft a good one. So in our triangle, we have 3 main points. We have our protagonist, we have love interest 1, and we have love interest 2. Love 1 will always be the first to enter, and they are either our first love or just the person that we've known longest. Then we have love 2, who will enter after love 1 and is basically there to challenge the love between our protagonist and love 1. Sometimes love 1 and love 2 will enter simultaneously, and it might be a bit murky as to who is who. Think like The Summer I Turned Pretty, both love interests because their brothers enter at the same time. However, there is always going to be clues as to who is number 1 and who is number 2. For example, at the beginning of The Summer I Turned Pretty, although both love interests are there from the very beginning, I'm pretty sure like the opening to the show is Belly talking about how much she loves love interest 1 or Conrad. So it might be a bit murky, but it should be fairly clear who is number 1 and who is number 2. And this triangle will go through what I have deduced to 2 main arcs. The first arc I am going to refer to as the leapfrog. In the leapfrog framework, we have love 1, who is either initially our love interest when the story starts, or is our first love interest that we get with in the story. They are usually the very easy, sensible option, maybe too sensible to the point where they're boring. And then love 2 will enter as an obstacle between them, but ultimately love 2 is gonna provide more of a journey for our protagonist, and therefore love 2, we are going to leap from love 1 into love 2's arms, and love 2 will ultimately win the triangle. Examples of this type of triangle would be The Vampire Diaries, The Mortal Instruments, the ACOTAR series. The Hunger Games as well, I would say, is this leapfrog arc. And the second story arc we have is what I'm going to call the stepping stone. So in the stepping stone, we have love one that we are struggling to be with for various reasons, whether that's emotional obstacles or whether that is plot-driven obstacles. And then we have love two that enters, and love two is basically just going to be one of said obstacles before we are finally able to get home to love one. So examples of this would be Twilight, The Summer I Turned Pretty, Emily in Paris, Sweet Home Alabama. And obviously every story has its nuances if it's well written. But I do think that every love triangle will follow one of these story structures. We're either going to start with love one and leap over to love two, or we're going to start with love one and we're going to have to work around obstacles, including an obstacle of love two, to find our way back to each other. And depending on whether this arc is told over like a 90-minute movie or whether it's told over a really drawn-out TV series, I think is going to affect the amount of obstacles and how clear this story arc is. I love triangles in TV because it allows for so much more slow burn and such rich character development on both points of the triangle. However, I do think with TV, especially TV where they don't know how long it's going to go on for, they kind of screw up the timeline. I think The Vampire Diaries did this. To me, The Vampire Diaries is probably, in my opinion, one of the best told love triangles ever depicted, but that's just my opinion. But they wrapped it up like 2 years too soon, and because of that they just threw in a bunch of like really artificial obstacles and just broke them up a million times and got them back together, when in reality what they should have done is just focused the show on other drama and let that story arc finish. Emily in Paris is doing this now as well. In the last season, they sort of, what should have wrapped up the love triangle, they threw a bunch of drama in, and now they've got a fourth point. It's turned into a love square where they're just going to repeat the love triangle again with a new person because they clearly want the final resolution of the love triangle to be at the end of the show, but they're not at the end of the show yet. But no matter whether we follow a narrative that is going to leapfrog or whether it's going to stepstone, we need from our protagonist for them to get to a very serious fork in the road where these two lines on the triangle are going to lead to two very different life paths depending on who they choose. And I've got 4 conditions that I think allow you to tell who is going to win the love triangle. So the first thing we need to consider to decide who's going to be our winner is who is our protagonist most changed by and who do they go on the biggest emotional journey with. Romance fiction is very, very character driven over plot driven, and therefore, in order to know who wins the love triangle, we need to know who is the biggest emotional driver for the protagonist. Who sends them on the most significant journey, who makes for the most impressive story, and who's going to force them outside their comfort zone and force them to grow. In The Mortal Instruments, Jace is the catalyst for Clary to get into the world of the Shadowhunters, and due to his influence, she is now going to become like a supernatural being, whereas Simon is reflective of her old, mundane and safe human life. Same sort of thing in Twilight. So I guess point 2 going off that is who do they have to sacrifice the most for? In Twilight, Bella has to give up her literal life and the world as she knows it in order to be with Edward. Being with Jacob is very safe, it's very easy, it's the correct decision for her to make on paper, but Edward is who's going to challenge her most and she needs to sacrifice the most in order to be with him. And condition number 3 is basically just inverted from what I've just said. Who is the most emotionally affected and changed for the better by our protagonist? Is it the person who is very emotionally stable from the beginning? Or is it the bad boy who she is going to make a better person and help heal their trauma, allow them to believe that they can be loved? In the Vampire Diaries, Stefan is a very safe option right from the beginning. He's already a good person. Like, he does go through his own emotional arc, but Damon starts our villain and becomes our hero because of Elena's love and Elena's influence. He becomes a better person because of her influence.
Be the better man, Damon.
So, who is our protagonist helping emotionally the most? And then I guess condition number 4 would be, where is the narrative framing when the main drama of the story kicks in? Who is going to help our protagonist through the most significant, plot part of the story? In the Hunger Games, Gale is there from the beginning, but Peter is the one who is in the games with Katniss. They're the ones that bond over their trauma that they share together. As you watch the Hunger Games, Gale starts as a pretty important character, but as the plot progresses, he kind of disappears and becomes a side character because Peter is the one who's there through the most significant emotional journey. So, if you can work out whether a love triangle is telling a leapfrog story or a stepping stone story, and you can assess all 4 of those conditions, then you should be able to tell who is going to win the love triangle. But all that being said, there are obviously exceptions to the rule, and a lot of people, because a love triangle is kind of a preset science, people will try to subvert it. I am yet to see a subverted love triangle done well. That might be a bold statement. I obviously have not seen every love triangle ever depicted, so maybe I've just not seen the right one yet. But I am yet to see a turned on its head love triangle done well that I buy into. There's only one example I have for where a love triangle didn't end the way it was supposed to, and I was okay with it. And that was Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. If you haven't seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and you don't want spoilers, then skip ahead to whatever timestamp is on the screen here. But for those who have seen it or don't care about spoilers, at the end of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, it's actually more of a love square. She has 3 romantic options.
The math of love quadrangles is so juicy while it lasts.
And the story is set up for her to choose Nathaniel, but she ends up choosing none of them, and she ends up choosing herself. And that's the only time where I think the subversion has worked, because the whole narrative of the entire show is mostly about her relationship with her own mental health and her relationship with this sort of need she has for romantic validation. So Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is the only love triangle or love square I've seen where it didn't end the way I wanted, but I was fine with it. There are a lot of love triangles that are set up for one victor and they turn it on its head, but it doesn't impress me, it just pisses me off. For example, the Gilmore Girls. The way they set up Rory and Jess to be each other's emotional anchors, to throw it in the bin. Jess wrote a book because Rory tells him to. Rory goes back to school because Jess is like, why did you drop out of Yale? Even though useless fucking Logan just sits there and lets her do whatever. Jess is the one that fixes her life because he has a bigger emotional tether to her. Do you know what? Don't get me started on Gilmore Girls and Rory and Jess. Just don't get me started. Another 2 examples where they try to subvert, and I think it went horribly wrong, is True Blood and Shadow and Bone. Those shows did such good jobs at the love triangle and setting up who should be the victor, to just ultimately be psych, it's actually going to be the other person. And I think they thought they were being clever, but what it did was just piss me off. So as I say, I'm yet to see a love triangle that's subverted well. If anyone disagrees with me, let me know in the comments an example where you think a love triangle was set up for one victor and then they switched it and it didn't absolutely infuriate you, because I'm yet to find one. So now we're all caught up on the two main arcs and all the conditions, and when subversions fail, let's talk about some ongoing love triangles, and from there, let's see if we can work out who we think is going to win. Unless they try and do some crazy, like, third act subversions, who do we think is going to win in the following things? I'm not going to give spoilers. I'm just going to sort of imply, I guess, who I think is going to win. So The Summer I Turned Pretty is just about to drop its third season. This is actually, I think, a really well done love triangle in the fact that I don't mind who wins. Maybe that's just because, I'm not overly obsessed with the show. I'm pretty evenly split for whoever wins. That being said, I think it's pretty obvious who is going to win. So let me ask you the following questions for those who have seen The Summer I Turned Pretty and don't know who's going to win. Who has the biggest obstacles to overcome in the plot in order to be with Belly? Who has Belly had the most significant emotional impact on? Who has had the most significant emotional impact on Belly? To me, it's fairly obvious. That's all I'll say on that. My Life with the Walter Boys is another sort of teen love triangle that's ongoing. I think it's basically the same plot as The Summer I Turned Pretty. Again, I think it's fairly obvious who's going to win that. I don't even need to ask those former questions. If you watch My Life with the Walter Boys and you can't tell which brother is going to win the love triangle, you haven't been paying attention. Another popular one we have that's probably going to wrap up soon, I think there might only be one season left, I'm not sure, but is Emily in Paris. Again, it's so obvious who's going to win that love triangle. I actually think they've dragged it out so much it's pissed people off, and it could be subverted because they know the audience is a little bit angry. But, it's fairly obvious who Emily is going to end up with at the end of the show. The Materialists movie, I know, is out in the US from mid-June. I think it came out in the US. It's not out in the UK until mid-August, so I know a lot of people watching this will have seen the movie. I have not seen it yet, so don't spoil it for me in the comments. But from watching the trailer, nothing else. I've watched the trailer one time. I can already tell you who's going to win the love triangle in Materialists, and it's going to be Chris Evans' character. Pedro Pascal is going to be like the good on paper. He's going to provide a more materialistically rich and happier life, but Chris Evans will be the emotional anchor, and he's going to be the one she'll have a better emotional journey with. Obviously, I need to watch the movie to get the full context of the characters and their development, but I'm pretty confident from the trailer alone that it's going to be Chris Evans' character that wins, and it's going to be a stepping stone arc as opposed to a leapfrog. Don't ruin it for me in the comments if you've already seen it. I want to watch it myself to find out if I'm right. So that's the end of class. The bell doesn't dismiss you, I dismiss you. If you enjoyed this video, then hit subscribe and stick around, because this is actually going to be the first video in a series I'm going to do called Trope School, which is where we're just going to break down common romance tropes and dive into what makes them well written and what makes them badly written, and why we love them generally and why they appeal to people. Leave a comment down below of what your favourite love triangles are, what your least favourite are. If you know of any love triangles that were subverted well, tell me, because I am yet to believe that such a thing exists. And I will see you guys in the next video. Class dismissed.